This is the D Word Podcast, and it's the year 2024. Now, if you have been following the podcast, you would know that last year we had a bit of a reinvention in some of the topics we did speak here on the podcast. And I took a bit of a break between September and the end of the year because of many reasons. One of them, really busy. And the second part was I needed to figure out, hey, when I want to start the podcast, I want to do it when I have something interesting to share. And I felt that as we started the brand new year, a lot of us were talking about new year, new me. Let's talk about the resolution. And I felt that I needed that entire phase to pass and then start with the first conversation here on the D Word Podcast. So if you have checked out my podcast on YouTube, you notice I don't edit anything. I let the conversation flow freely. And I hope that today's episode, being the first one for the year, will actually give you some insight as we start off a brand new year. I'm going to share with you something from my perspective, and I hope that also resonates with you. When one looks at a brand new year, you can't help but look back at the previous year. Now, most of us are used to looking at the negatives and how those negatives cannot happen in the new year. That is great. But I think a big thing we need to look at is how far we've grown. Maybe we've grown emotionally. Maybe we've grown in how we make better decisions. Maybe grow in your career. All these things are major factors when we look into a new year and we look back at the previous year. The last thing you want to do is go into a brand new year and you're in the same position you were last year. Now, how does one even dissect this? If you didn't know this, I'm a radio host first. Radio is all I do. That's also one of the reasons why I don't do podcasts a lot. People always say podcasts is like radio shows online. It's true. But radio for me is still my priority. But whenever I'm on radio, I get to connect with different kinds of people. Some of these people are having different journeys that are very different to you and I. And you have to ask yourself, are these situations learning experiences for them? Or is it easy for them just to pass the buck on to somebody else and leave on? Let me give you an example. Have you ever heard somebody who's looked at you and you have something that they basically want in life, and instead of saying, wow, that's nice, well done on getting that, they would say, that's so lucky. You're so lucky to get that. I don't believe in the word luck. I believe that hard work plus dedication and prayer equals you getting what you want. And if you continuously live your life building the fact that if I can't get something, I'm going to ask somebody else to fix it for me who doesn't know my life or my situation, where does it end, right? Where does it end if you continuously ask people to fix situations? It's okay now and again, but I believe there comes a point when you will have to ask yourself that very big, important question. I need to take ownership of where I am in my life. I need to take ownership of the situation. So as we start a brand new year, let's just look at this, right? Let me ask you this question. How much of your decision making in your life do you actually own? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is just food for thought, and I hope that this does make a difference in your world. If you say, hey, Deon, you know what? Sometimes I am guilty of asking people to fix some of the things I need, and I need to take ownership of it. So let's start with something simple that everybody understands. Debt. Debt is crazy, right? And if you are in debt, you would know that the stress of paying off the debt is quite daunting. But if you are in debt, and if you want something, but don't really need it, but you buy it anyway and put it onto your pile of debt, whose fault is that? But society makes it seem that the more debt I compile, somebody else will fix it for me. The truth is, if you continuously pile on debt, when, just say argument's sake, you're much older and you're no longer here, somebody, maybe your kids or somebody, is going to be liable for that debt. Now that's scary to even think about, because if you're looking at life in the broad sense of things, life should be carefree. It shouldn't be built on mistakes that are continuously extending every single year, and then somebody else has to pay for that. I know it's quite serious to talk about, but it is true. It's like all of us, every single one of us, has to take ownership of how we make decisions. I was that person. I didn't have any kickstart in life. I didn't have anything handed to me. I didn't have anything said, hey, I'm going to ask this person to give me all of this, because if they give it to me, I'll be okay. And I'll never forget the first time I actually thought about the situations I had. And if you know my story, I didn't have anything. I pretty much had to work really hard from the time I was 17, came out of high school, and I had to push on, change careers, figure out what I want to do. And I never went to somebody and said, hey, help me. I prayed about it, yes, but I prayed for guidance in where I want to be and how I'm going to get there. I need to know. I didn't be around people that said, oh, it's so sad, let's fix it. No, I try to be around people who empower me to be better for myself. So the first step of this entire thing, this entire journey, is taking ownership of your decisions, right? And taking ownership of your decisions is quite simple. If you don't have something, do you need it? And if you need it, how can you get it, right? Notice I didn't say how can you swipe it. I said how can you get it? Swipe it means great things for some, but if you don't understand how to get it with the cash you've earned, then obviously it means that you need to look at it differently. Maybe earn a side income that could somehow fund that, could be one option, or find a way. So that is the first step. The second step is ask yourself, are you living within your means? And I never understand that how people can do this without looking at the repercussions. And I'm going to say this quite openly. If you are in debt, don't get married. No matter how society tells you, get married, you're at the right age. Now imagine if you are in debt, you get married, you're going to be stressed, you have a family, which shouldn't really happen if you are in debt, by the way. You shouldn't be in debt. If you're having a family, the first step you should talk about is, am I financially ready for this? And if you say yes to all of that, then great, but then talk about it. But if you don't have all of that in check, you're going to have a lot of stress coming your way. And it's something that you have the power to control. You have the power to control. So it still stems back to what I just said earlier on my first point, taking ownership of your decisions. Now, in a new year, I can dwell on that for a very long time, taking ownership of your decisions. But this podcast was built on a refresh as we start a brand new year. The first thing you need to do is live within your means. The second part to that would be understanding where you are in life. And the third part is where you want to be. If you want a bigger home for your family, maybe your kids are growing, ask yourself, how can I work harder for that? The second part is, if your kids are growing, you also need to maybe get a bigger car. How can you get that? And if all these questions leave you with a lot of question marks like, hey, I never really thought about it, well, maybe now's a good time to think about it and say, hey, how could I apply this for my family? The other thing that I want to talk about as we get to the end of this podcast is leaving a legacy for your family. A lot of people don't talk about this. They feel like, hey, if I'm living my life, when I'm older, my kids will take care of me. That'll be the story. End of the day, I did that for my parents. That's okay. In some situations, that's great. But at the end of that entire statement, there's one thing you need to understand. Legacy is built on a generation of parents leaving something for the next generation to enjoy. It's not built on having kids. Having legacy is not having kids. Legacy is leaving something for your kids. So be it property, be it finances, be it whatever it is, That is a legacy, leaving something for them. So when those kids have their kids, that legacy that you left will be on to them. And if you never really thought about it, now is a good time to think about it. Now, as we start off a brand new year, I want to talk about many things. I don't even know what to title this podcast because I said I'm not going to number my podcast in 2024. I just want to talk about things that I see, and I want to talk about things that people know. And this is a fun fact. The fun fact is, if you don't take ownership of how you feel and how you make decisions, life will make it for you. Now that is scary. Life will make it for you. Because if you think about it, life will bring stress, and stress will bring a lot of confusion. It'll cause fights to happen, and you don't want that. So taking ownership means being aware of what you're doing around you, understanding your finances, and living within your means. If you want to start a family, ask yourself, are you financially ready to bring a human being into this world? Not every person wants to be a parent, right? Not every person wants to be one. But even if you want to be a parent, are you ready to be the best version of that? Now is a good time to talk about that, right? As we start a brand new year. So starting a family could be great, but it's not for what everybody wants. If people want it, that's great. I personally, when my wife and I got married, we wanted to look at the world differently. We didn't want to follow the traditions of the world, where most people at our age were doing this and that. We said, nope, we want to try this because that is our perspective, our view on life. And for many of you that don't know this about me, I live with owning my decisions in everything I do. He does not want to talk to me or communicate with me, I'm aware about that, then I don't try. If I also have a situation where somebody may have did something, I understand what they're capable of, I forgive them, but it doesn't mean I'm going to put myself out there for it to happen again. And the same goes with owning everything you do in 2024. Watch the people you hang out with. Watch what you say. Watch what you do. Take ownership of everything in your life, be it family, be it friends, be it your kids, be it your grandkids, whatever it is. Take ownership of it. It's your life, and you are the director of how your life plans out. So I hope it's a good one. And I hope this podcast was a good one for you, and I hope you could take away something from it. So make sure you check out the D-Word podcast. It's available on YouTube for you to watch, and it's available everywhere else. But the best part is, if you check out my website, deongovernor.com, you can watch it or you can listen to it there. So it's the one place where you can get the podcast every single week. Have a great week and have an awesome start to 2024. And as I said, this wasn't a scripted podcast. I just wanted to share as we start a brand new year that you are in charge of how your life plans out. So take ownership of it for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and for where you want to leave a legacy for the next generation. Take care. Have a blessed day.